Hey everyone, welcome back for the third part of this essay. If you haven't seen the other two parts, please refer to the description below. Anyways, for the third paragraph, I consider this to be one of your richest paragraphs in terms of the ideas and writing. So let's see what you should focus on. I personally like to focus on resistance and consequence. So, in other words, how do the characters resist and what consequences does this bring? Now remember, consequences don't have to be negative. There can be negative consequences for the individual, such as death, but at the same time, there can be positive consequences for society and for future generations. So, for example, these resistant characters leave a legacy of hope that drives social change in the future. So, think of this paragraph as a more hopeful paragraph in contrast to your first two. And now, in relation to this topic, the focus will be more on the consequences of when society challenges how skin color shapes the experiences of people. So let's begin. I start off with this topic sentence because I really like this quote, but I use it in a slightly different way. Driven by a future that is not just more of the past waiting to happen, such harrowing discrepancies in the experiences between those of different colors empowers some to courageously transcend homogeneity, so that just means the state of being the same, or in other words, conforming, to resist despotism, so dictatorship, and prejudice. Basically, what I'm saying here is that some people do not comply, although be careful not to victim blame when you're talking about compliance. But in this case, we're talking about those who resist, and that brings a degree of hope. So let's see how this is shown. Starting off with the longest memory. Antithetical to his father, Chapel typifies the younger generation who realizes that their skin color results in them being disenfranchised from cradle to grave, and then thus becomes energized to pull at the rusted anchor of slavery. So remember, your characters represent a group of people, not a single person. And also, this shows how his realization of inequity is what motivates him to change, or to at least escape the plantation. Now, continuing on, although such individual resistance results in physical defeat, so Chapel eventually, unfortunately dies, but his defiant and powerful legacy worked to spread the seeds of discontent, leaving even the most indoctrinated slaves to question how long the master's daylight can rule over our nights. So these two quotes are great together because they show exactly what I just said. Even though there are physical and negative consequences for the individual, there are positive consequences for future generations, and therefore there is hope. Next, I talk about Lydia and how she is able to overlook the prejudice associated with skin color. Now, this is quite important because there is hope, there is now hope that people are beginning not to put emphasis on skin color, but rather the quality of the other as a human being. So, this is a very important milestone in terms of the character developments. Now, I like to finish my analysis of the longest memory by looking up. So, what this means is you should give some broader context for why the author is doing particular things. So, why is the author using polyvocal voices? So, in other words, why is he mentioning different perspectives from different characters throughout the entire novel? Well, one possible interpretation of this is that he's trying to fill in the gaps of an eradicated past. Now, this is a quote not from the novel, but from Deguy himself. So I wouldn't use too many of those, but if you're able to find one or two that work really well, like this one, then feel free to use it. So intending to fill in the gaps of an eradicated past, Deguy's polyvocal structure brings those silenced voices that I just mentioned into a harmonic chorus, in asserting that there are always those determined to discard the prodigious carpet. Now, how did I interpret the prodigious carpet? Because it is quite a complex metaphor, but in this case, I basically say the carpet is a symbol of a shared past steeped in indentured servitude. So, a past steeped in slavery. Hopefully that makes sense, and let's move on. Moving to the transition sentence, I talk about how the play offers the same picture of hope and that the desire for reconciliation is like a song that's catching on. So let's see how this is the case. And again, you can see with the green parts, this is where I begin my comparison. So for this first section here, I'm actually comparing the narrative structures. So as opposed to being polyphonic, in Deguy's novel or novella, it's many experiences captured through many characters. Whereas with the play, which you can also call a monodrama, so one actor, it's many experiences being presented through one character. So slight difference, and the significance of this one character is that the Aboriginal everywoman, she comes to typify those who embrace their indigenous skin color, despite the trauma. So this is very important. It's kind of like Chapel, which is why I make the second comparison. And we can see her defiant dignity in March and Walking Across Bridges, where the community of people are united because of their shared grief. And as a result of this grief, they are inspired or empowered to fight for most of their lives. And then I talk about how such displays of solidarity and collective catharsis, because they are voicing their concerns and emotions, this results in a more concrete form of hope. And the reason why this is the case is because the public begins to understand the indescribable anguish that they've suffered through. And basically, what I'm trying to say here is as long as Indigenous Australians are willing and are able to voice their concerns, this results in hope because people are able to understand. And understanding results in them being able to advocate for political change. Remember that political and social change does not always have to start with politicians. It can start from a recognition and understanding of injustices, and then groups of like-minded people coming together and urging national leaders to take practical action. So that's what's happening here with the Walking Across Bridges and 250,000 people uniting together. And always remember, don't forget the topic. So that's why in this last sentence, I mentioned that their purpose of uniting is to standardize the privileges and autonomy given to those of varying skin color. So remember how at the start we talked about how there's a disparity in experiences between different skin colors? Now, from the disparity, we're trying to standardize that. So every skin color is treated the same. And thus, reintegrating the tapestry of land and people into Indigenous cultural identity. The tapestry of land and people is a good symbol. 2 reasons. First, it's similar to the prodigious carpet in The Longest Memory in the sense that a tapestry and a carpet are both fabrics of some sort. And in terms of the actual meaning, in this case, it also represents the complexity of Indigenous land and people and how we are working as a society to first mend this fractured tapestry of land and people, which was fractured because of colonization. And now we're trying to fix that and reintegrate that or reintroduce that back into the Indigenous culture. But basically, society is trying to fix or mend what was previously fractured. Okay, so summing everything up, both texts present individuals and communities that have been cruelly swept aside in the hope of shining a light on such travesties will lead to a groundswell for change. This is why this is your hopeful paragraph. With your conclusion, it does not need to be long, and there's multiple ways to do this. So you don't have to treat my conclusion as, a very rigid structure or sample that you need to follow, although there are a couple of things. First, I recommend that you mention something about the message. So in this case, I'm saying it's that they both provide hope for meaningful reconciliation as more resilient and progressive voices publicly implore for social change. So you can choose to summarize your contention and then maybe mention the message. That's a good way to go about it. For the last sentence, my personal preference is to end with a quote from one of the books, or even better, from both. So in this case, I talk about how by the play's final curtain, so a bit of a metaphor here, it's reflecting how my essay, like a play, is coming to an end. As the ice around our heart thaws, so the symbol of the block of ice is hanging up on the stage throughout the entire play and is melting as the play progresses. So by the end of the play, the ice, which is represented by the ice block, so the ice around our hearts, that's melting. And what that signifies is that it may be finally possible for us as the audience to unravel the prodigious carpet. We have enough understanding and enough sympathy and empathy to approach this complex prodigious carpet and attempt to begin this entire fabric again. So that's it for this essay analysis. We'll be going through some other essays from other sections, but also from this section in the coming videos. So hope you enjoyed that. If you do have any questions, please leave it in the comments below. Thank you.